Hello, my pleasure to come your way again with more business on Business Live. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji. Coming up in this evening's edition, member of Public Interest Accountability Committee, PIAC, renews call for government to empower it to prosecute those who misuse oil and gas proceeds. Latest Bank of Ghana reports indicate drop in commodity prices globally, not impacting government earnings negatively. Plus, we bring you the Joy Business Van tonight. These and others coming up on Business Live. Don't go away. We're coming back in a jiffy with the details.
Business Live today.
Thank you very much for staying. Welcome back. The Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PIAC, is asking government to grant legal authority to the committee for prosecution of people who misuse proceeds from the country's oil and gas resources. It says its present capacity of just compliance and project monitoring falls short of powers to well sanitize the system. A member of the committee, Dr. Afil Money, was speaking at the public forum in Kumasi on 6 years of petroleum production in Ghana.
About 100 participants representing pressure groups, professionals and religious bodies as well as traditional authorities attended the session. Dr. Moni, who is also president of Ghana Journalists Association, is confident granting PIAC prosecution powers will ultimately benefit the citizenry.
To be empowered legally to prosecute people who are found wanted in terms of the use of oil resources, or the people who are negligent in monitoring oil resources. It's a suggestion which is worth considering, so we'll table it at the right quarters with the hope that the right response will be found to this question. In fact, this is something which has come out so forcefully in this forum, and that our job should not rest in exposing the wrongdoing in certain quarters. Our job should be to extend to prosecute people who, as I said, are negligent, or people who have been people who are complicit in misusing our oil resources.
Financial journalists at the forum urged individuals and corporate institutions to position themselves for opportunities provided by the oil industry to boost the local economy. Beatrice Natoshitoto is secretary of the Institute of Financial and Economic Journalists.
Own the industry. How do you own the industry? You need to get involved and get engaged in that. To do that, the industry requires certain services. It requires certain skills. This is where, as Ghanaians, we need to position ourselves to provide these services. For instance, if an oil company is operating in Ghana and they need water supply, you need to be able to position yourself as a businessman in Ghana who can supply that water to the oil company. But to do that, you also need to follow certain standards. And so it is the duty of any businessman who wants to play a role, or even any individual who wants to play a role, to read around the industry or engage with people who have knowledge about what the industry requires, so that you can benefit from it. Businesses can benefit from it. Even dressmaking, water supply services, hotel manager, cleaning services, all these people can benefit from the industry.
Reporting for Joy News, Nana Sensumensa.
Meanwhile, former member of PIAC, Ishmael Ejekumihini, has backed calls for the award of such prosecutorial powers to the committee to prosecute all those found to misuse proceeds of the oil and gas resources.
It's about the role of PIAC and what happens if PIAC should make any adverse finding. What has tended to happen is you only make findings and you prefer recommendations, but then nobody seem to act on them. PIAC submit reports, they publish their reports, they meet with even the Public Account Committee as well as the Finance Committee of Parliament, but then you find same issues raised in previous reports still hanging. So, I mean, if PIAC doesn't have any power to enforce its recommendations, even when serious infractions have been detected, then it's almost like a toothless bulldog. So, I think there has to be a system, a mechanism, a change in the law that allows PIAC to be able to actually carry through and insist on certain things being done. So I still believe that those powers is very necessary. If not, then I think the other stakeholders who are represented by the members of PIAC could also institute legal actions and ensure that some of these issues are enforced.
Ishmael Ejokunhene was speaking earlier on the marketplace. The continuous fall in commodity prices has not impacted negatively on government earnings from traditional exports. That's the conclusion one may draw after going through the Bank of Ghana's economic and financial data ending April this year. George Wiafe has more.
According to the data, the state as at April this year secured almost $5 billion from traditional exports. Earnings from gold was $2.2 billion. Cocoa stood at $1.1 billion, while the state got $845 million from oil exports. Total earnings as at April this year is still higher than what is secured in the same period for last year. Persons close to government are attributing the pickup to increase in volumes exported, so that could make up for any drop in prices on the international market. The development could help show up government's revenue, which we understand has been experiencing some challenges in the first quarter of this year. The returns could also motivate cocoa farmers who are hoping for improved payments from government when the cocoa season opens later this year. For the mining firms in Ghana, it could be all smiles after most of them were forced to close down some mining sites because of declining returns due to falling prices on the world market.
Ghana is expected to receive some $116 million from the IMF in July this year. The funds will support the country's import activities should the IMF board successfully review the country's performance under the fund program. According to the IMF, Ghana has made progress in meeting some targets regarding the energy sector debt, as well as recapitalizing troubled banks. Country representatives of the IMF, Dr. Natalia Koliadina, however, tells Joy Business more effort is required in other areas of the economy to ensure a successful review by the board.
Yes, we made very significant progress since we initiated the discussions under the fourth review during our April meeting. And now we much better understand the implications of the new policies presented by the government in the budget. We also welcome some of the measures that have already been implemented. For example, to give you one example is reducing the rigidities through the passing of the act on imposing a cap on earmarked revenues, for example. This is one example. At the same time, we still need to clarify some details on some other issues. And these are the issues like the debt of the state-owned enterprises, and also how the government is going to improve, what is going to be done to improve their financial viability. The other issue is addressing the weaknesses in the banking system. At the same time, we are very optimistic that over the next couple of weeks we will be able to complete our work and start preparing the documents for the board.
And so, from what you're saying, it looks like the meeting would indeed happen in July and not in June, the board meeting.
Well, George, I wouldn't really set any targets or dates, even though that would like our performance criteria. We don't impose performance criteria on ourselves. Yes, well, the board meeting, if we complete our discussions within a few weeks, then most likely the board meeting would be sometimes in July, yeah.
Are we making that much progress on all these targets, reforms, and measures that indeed the board can meet in July, and what people will be looking for is given the thumbs up of programs that we made so far, and then releasing that $116 million that Fitch was talking about?
Well, yes, I'm personally optimistic that the board would have a meeting for Ghana. And you're right, the situation is not that simple because the program veered off track last year. You know that there was a very significant fiscal slippage. Budget deficit in 2016 was 8.75% of GDP compared with the programmed level of 5.25% of GDP. So essentially, the fourth review needs to convince everybody that the program will be brought back on track. And this is one issue that the directors definitely would be interested in looking and discussing, how the program would be brought back on track. And more specifically, the measures which would restore fiscal discipline and facilitate support fiscal consolidation, which would be sufficient with bringing debt on the consistently and clearly downward path.
Monday, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana reduced the policy rate from 23.5% to 22.5%, representing 100 basis points or 1 percentage point. This brings to 300 basis points or 3 percentage points reduction in the rate so far this year. Now, but would this translate into reducing the cost of credit for businesses as expected, and how soon? Sheila Tamaklo explores the situation.
The policy rate is the benchmark rate at which the Bank of Ghana lends to banks. This essentially somewhat determines the cost of credit for businesses. Businesses have, however, always complained banks hardly reduce their lending rates, as expected whenever the Bank of Ghana reduces the benchmark rate.
The private sector has not seen corresponding decrease in cost of credit, and this is worrying. We think that there should be that realignment, you see, of key monetary policies and what happens in our commercial banks. The cost of credit in the country at the moment makes it difficult for businesses to be able to scale up, and more importantly, making businesses very competitive, especially when we want to go the export way.
To what extent are the concerns justified? Much as the concerns are largely legitimate, banks cannot entirely be blamed for this phenomenon.
In 2016, for example, the non-performing loans provisions made by the banks were significantly high, and therefore, they might want to be able to, reduce their risk, in terms of, the credit that have been given out, reduce the non-performing loans portfolio with almost all the banks. So I think that it will take a little bit of time for the banks to respond to the continuous reduction of the policy rate.
Businesses, however, insist they deserve a reduction in bank lending rates this time around, especially after the substantial drop of 300 basis points in the policy rate so far this year. But will banks accordingly reduce their lending rates to the relief of businesses, and how soon?
Already, interbank market has reacted. As at this morning, the interbank borrowing rate has fallen from 13.51 as at yesterday to about 12.51 this morning. And then I'm sure at the time that most banks will meet to fix their base rate, they will take the fall in rate into consideration.
In some jurisdictions, you have a situation where the central bank, through some regulation of a sort, would cap, the rate at which banks charge, borrowers. AGI has persistently recommended the capping of interest rate, such that if you have policy rate at 22.5%, then commercial banks should not be allowed to charge anything above 400 basis points or 4 percentage points above the policy rate. These are the kind of regulations that can come to play to ensure that the private sector can thrive.
I think that time has come that we have to really look at the build-up of the base rate. That's the formula. I think it's too rigid downward. Some of the key building blocks have to be really looked into so that it will make it more flexible. I do not subscribe to the idea that we say we should cap interest rates in the country. I don't subscribe to it. But what I think should be done is we should allow each bank to determine its own base rate without any formula guarding that, because otherwise it becomes more or less like a regulatory environment, regulating interest rates.
Currently across the country and across the banks, well, the average interest rate is at 30.5%. But with the new monetary policy rate at 22.5% and inflation expected to ease as we go down, well, it is likely that the next time you walk into a bank to borrow some money, the interest rates that you'll be paying this time might go down by a few percentage points. Reporting for Joy Business, Sheila Tamaklu.
And you're still on Business Live. We're taking a breather here. We'll be back with the Joy Business Fan.
Business Live today.
Welcome back. Now, deciding on what area of business to launch into is always a matter of debate and requires taking chances. That's how Anne Amenuvo started Play Portal GH, jigsaw puzzle making startup. It's been only 9 months, but the business appears to be paying off. The Joy Business Van stops by her workplace at Pokwasi here in Accra.
In her garage, now converted into a workspace, Anne Amenuvo makes jigsaw puzzles.
Jigsaw puzzles is something that most of us are familiar with. It's an interactive, working plaything people of all ages can have fun with. So Play Portrait GH came about as a way of using jigsaw puzzles to express yourself. So what we usually do is you send us your photo, we make the jigsaw puzzle for you, and then you can add your own personal message and give to friends for all occasions, whether they are birthdays, weddings, anniversaries.
Puzzles have always been liked, no matter the age group, and it is Anne's personal favorite too. The research assistant in August 2016 decided to explore that area of business. But she had a vision too.
The first concept actually was to use jigsaw puzzles in the sense that we get an image like Thomas Sankara, Kwame Nkrumah, any person that has influenced the continent, and then create a jigsaw puzzle out of their photo and then add information about the person and then package it. So that's what's brought about going into this startup to use jigsaw puzzles to tell the African story. Then along the way, we thought that, okay, jigsaw puzzles can be used for other things, which then brought about the other startup, Play Portrait. So Platinum's box is our educational side, and then Play Portrait is more of the fun, interactive, custom puzzle side.
People seem to love the idea of having their photos customized into a jigsaw puzzle, and for others, it was a perfect choice for a gift. As Anne explains to me, it's quite a simple process to make these customized jigsaw puzzles.
And the important thing is to make sure clients give you images that have good pixel strength. So when the image comes through, we run it through the system to check the pixel strength. And then there's a software that helps us adjust the image. We print it out. We mostly print it with we outsource the printing. Get it printed, bring it back here and adhere to the straw board as you're seeing. and then cut it through the machine.
Anne markets her products a lot on social media, but most of her customers have been won over by recommendation. This is getting really confusing. I thought this was simple, but it's getting really confusing.
Yes, so I guess I can help you here. I think maybe the head should go somewhere like this.
Okay.
It's amazing. That's why we even try to add the postcard version of the image for people to look on to help assemble it. I guess you can be going from there.
I'm fine now.
You're fine.
Okay. What do you need to scale up your business? I mean, you've been doing this for
almost a year. I think
to take it to a different level.
Exposure like this. With exposure like this, the more people get to know, because when depending on recommendation, social media campaigns gives you results, but since it's a new concept that people are not so familiar with, sometimes when I even put it online, some people think I'm marketing the software or something. They don't even understand that it's actually a jigsaw puzzle of their photo in a physical form that they can break apart and bring back together. So it's more of physical marketing. And that is where I depend on people who order, and then their friends see it and then they order it. 9
months since she launched, Anne says business has not been bad at all. She's at the break-even stage. She is certain she can sell more if she opens a showroom. That is work in progress.
Ultimate goal is to have this platform where whenever you're not sure what to give someone, you can send your image and then Play Portraits can personalize your gifting for people. Because the other concept we have, which is the Play Canvas, is mostly I had someone who recently ordered it and she told me plainly that the person she was ordering for has it all. Is it a perfume you get him? Is it a shirt? You don't know. She doesn't know what to get him. But the Play Canvas, since we used this image and then created a jigsaw puzzle for it and adhered it to the canvas for the person, and she added her personal message, it was the most thoughtful gift she said the person felt.
And that brings her a lot of satisfaction. Great. I just got the last piece.
Good.
Very beautiful.
All right, so we'll bring you the Joy Business Fund again next Wednesday. It's now time for Busy Bits.
Do you want to close multiple windows all at once? Hold the Control key down and click on each of the tabs in the taskbar at the bottom of the screen that you want to close. Then right-click on one of the selected tabs and select Minimize Group from the menu that appears. You might also want to try the other options on this menu just to see what they do. Cascade, tile horizontally, and tile vertically. Selecting Close Group will close all the windows you have selected. As you get used to using the computer, you inevitably get used to having more and more windows open at once. This little trick can help you manage them more efficiently.
Up next is the interview of the day.
Interview of the day.
GCNet to find out about their operations, their challenges, and then today we are here.
So Honorable, sitting in here, and then you were at GCNet. I mean, when you went to GCNet, listening to both parties, there seems to be some kind of, perception. How are you going to deal with it?
The Vice President has indicated that people have to work together. They have to work together. GCNet, Westblue have to work together. Both of them have contracts. They are not going to cancel their contracts, okay? Now,
so GCNet's contract is not going to cancel, Westblue's contract is not going to
but a contract has to be annual. You don't want to be paying judgment debts. Okay, you can't do it. They have contracts. We have to respect contracts. So they just have to integrate their systems and work together, okay?
Interview of the day.
And that's it for Business Life today. We come your way again with more interesting developments tomorrow. My name is Emmanuel Abuachi. Good evening.